A few years ago, I was 32 and worked as a software engineer. I rarely had time for fun, so I planned a camping trip with friends. We chose a campsite I knew well. It was in a dense forest with tall pines and the sound of a distant creek. I thought it would be an escape from city life. When we arrived, everything seemed normal. We set up our tents and lit a campfire. The flames crackled, warming the cool air. But then something shifted. I couldn't say when. I felt a chill in the air, even though the sky was clear. I looked at my friends. They were laughing and telling stories. Still, I felt something was off. I swore I saw shadows moving in the trees. My heart raced. We tried to laugh it off, but the tension lingered. Later that night, I woke up to rustling outside my tent. My heart raced. I thought maybe it was a raccoon. I crawled out, flashlight in hand. The woods were silent. I found nothing, but I felt watched. I tried to shake it off. The next day, we hiked. I joked about how silly I was for getting scared. That evening, we gathered around the fire again. I noticed something strange. My backpack had been moved. I could have sworn I left it in a different spot. My stomach tightened. I picked it up, but didn't say anything to my friends. They'd just think I was imagining things again. As night fell for the third time, one friend claimed he heard laughter in the distance. It sent chills down my spine. I stood close to the fire, trying to ignore it. Then I heard it too, a soft laughter echoing through the trees. I turned, hoping to see something, but the shadows blocked my view. My friends looked serious. Hours passed, and the creek's sounds grew louder. It felt too close. I was uncomfortable now, wanting to leave. When morning finally came, we packed up, but I felt uneasy. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, like it had followed us home. Once we were back in the city, we questioned everything. What did we really experience? Was it all in our heads? My friends laughed, trying to act like it was just a joke, but I knew I could still hear the laughter. It haunted me. I felt like something was still with me. Even now, I often think back to that trip. The laughter still rings in my ears, and I can't help but wonder if those shadows in the woods were watching us all along. It was just a camping trip, right? But I can't shake that feeling. Something was wrong, and it never truly left. When I returned to work, the shadows lingered in my mind. I began to distract myself with code and deadlines, but the laughter haunted me. I couldn't focus. One afternoon, a coworker noticed my distracted demeanor. I shared snippets of the trip, dismissing the fear at first. Just a camping trip, right? But when I mentioned the laughter, her expression changed. Laughter? She asked, intrigued. You heard laughter? There are stories about that area. My curiosity piqued. I asked her to explain. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. It said that campers hear voices in the forest. Sometimes they hear laughter, but it always has a twisted feel. People have gone missing around there too. My curiosity piqued. I asked her to explain. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. It said that campers hear voices in the forest. Sometimes they hear laughter, but it always has a twisted feel. People have gone missing around there too. A chill ran down my spine. I felt a knot in my stomach. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled up online forums and stumbled upon threads dedicated to that very campsite. Stories flooded in. Many shared similar experiences, strange noises, things moving, and an overwhelming feeling of being watched. Some claimed to have seen figures hidden among the trees. I felt sick. Those were our woods, and I dismissed it all as imagination. Why hadn't I paid more attention? The next day, driven by a mix of dread and need for answers, I called my friends. I needed to know if they felt the same way. They laughed it off, of course. "What a weird trip, huh?" one said. I even thought about going back. My heart raced. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Did you forget the laughter?
The shadows? I pressed, desperation creeping into my tone. The line fell silent. I could feel their hesitation through the phone. "Yeah, but it was just fun, right?" another friend finally replied. "We were just freaked out. It's no big deal." It felt like they were brushing me off. I knew I wasn't crazy. That weekend, still stirred by the details my coworker shared, I decided to return to the campsite myself, alone. I needed to confront whatever was lurking. As I packed my bag, I tried to silence the rising anxiety. The laughter echoed in my mind. I told myself I'd be fine, that I could handle it. When I arrived, memories flooded back. The trees swayed as if whispering secrets. Nervous energy pulsed through me, but I set up my tent anyway. Oddly, the area didn't seem as busy as I remembered. There weren't any other campers around. I shrugged it off. It was early. Maybe they'd arrive later. As night fell, I built a fire to shake off the growing cold. I tried to convince myself to enjoy the peace. But then I heard it. Soft laughter rippling through the darkness. My heart dropped. It was just as I remembered. But this time, I wasn't in a group. I was alone. The shadows returned, twisting in the firelight as if alive. I felt a primal fear clawing at my mind. That's when I saw it. A dark figure darting behind a tree. Something was watching me, and it wasn't human. A chill ran through me. I stood frozen, the laughter growing louder, echoing in a haunting melody. Suddenly, everything went dark. The fire sputtered before extinguishing completely, leaving me in an abyss of silence. Fear clutched at my throat as I stood in the cold, staring into the void beyond. What was out there, waiting for me? I blinked, trying to adjust my eyes to the darkness. The laughter still echoed, twisted and distorted, but now I could feel an electric pulse in the air around me. A shiver crept down my spine, and I instinctively backed away from where I thought the figure had disappeared. I fumbled for my phone, hoping the screen's light would cut through the oppressive darkness. Finally, the dim glow flickered to life. The forest emerged around me in ghostly shades, revealing the outline of trees that loomed like sentinels. I scanned the area, my hands shaking. "Hello?" I called out, my voice wavering. The laughter subsided momentarily, replaced by an eerie silence. I felt ridiculous for talking to the void, but something urged me not to leave just yet. Then, from the edge of my vision, I caught movement, a shift in the trees. Something, or someone, was still out there. My heart raced as I moved closer to the shadows, compelled by a mix of fear and curiosity. As I crept forward, I noticed the faint rustle of leaves, like fingers brushing against each other. I could hardly breathe. My palms were clammy as I raised my phone higher, illuminating the thicket. I swiveled my head, trying to pinpoint the sound. There it was again, soft laughter, low and sinister, bouncing off the trees. I turned on my heel, prepared to bolt back to my tent, but I stumbled over something in the underbrush. My phone slipped from my grip and clattered to the ground, the light extinguishing once more. Panic surged through me. I bent to retrieve it, hands shaking as I fumbled in the dark. That's when I felt it, a cold hand on my shoulder. I froze. Time seemed to stand still. My heart thudded violently in my chest. Slowly, I turned my head, adrenaline flooding my veins. There was nothing there. The space behind me was empty. I stumbled backward, my instinct screaming at me to run. I turned and dashed toward my tent, a primal urge to escape surging through me. I could hear the laughter again, louder and more chaotic. It was like a call, urging me to stop, to turn around. But I didn't dare look back. I dove into the safety of the fabric and zipped it closed, my breath coming in desperate gasps. Inside, I pressed myself against the wall, ears straining for any sound. What was out there? I couldn't see or reason it away anymore. I gave myself a moment to calm, focusing on the steady rhythm of my heartbeat. Then the laughter shifted. It now rose and fell, getting closer and further away, like it was dancing around my tent. It mimicked the rhythm of my breathing, a taunting tempo pulsing in the night. The shadows stretched along the fabric as if something were circling me. In a moment of reckless bravery, I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, but the outside world beyond was eerily still, just a void. I wasn't alone anymore. That realization hit me like a punch. I wasn't just hearing laughter. Something wanted to draw me out, to play a game. And as I sat there quaking under the faint light, a new sound pierced the silence, a children's voice, sweet and high-pitched, whispering my name from just outside the tent. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move, couldn't think. All I could do was listen as it beckoned me again. I pressed my back into the tent wall, trying to steady my breath. The voice outside was so soft, like a whisper carried on the wind. Come out, it called again, each word dragging through the air like a playful taunt. My heart thumped to a different beat now, a mix of fear and misplaced curiosity. Who was it? A child lost in the woods? That didn't seem right. The laughter returned, louder and more discordant, spiraling through the night. The juxtaposition of the sweet voice and the jarring laughter twisted inside my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was all part of the same sinister rhythm. "Who's out there?" I croaked, trying to keep my voice steady, but it cracked at the edges. No reply came, just an insistent rustle, drawing my attention back to the shadows. I felt like the darkness itself was watching me. The tent fabric felt thinner, more vulnerable, and the flashlight's beam felt inadequate against the oppressive night. I suddenly wished I hadn't come camping at all. What if it was some prank, or worse, something that shouldn't be here? With a shaky hand, I pulled the zipper down, knowing I shouldn't, knowing it was the worst idea possible. But the urge to uncover the truth was almost unbearable. I just needed to see. "Hello?" I repeated, breathless now. I didn't even recognize the tremor in my own voice. I slowly pulled the flap open, peering out as if I were at the edge of a pit. The moonlight poured in, illuminating the ground but leaving the trees shrouded in shadows. Then I saw it. In the clearing, just past the trees, stood a figure. It was small, hunched over, with wild hair that danced around its head. A child? No, the silhouette was too sharp, too unnatural. I could barely make out the features, but its face looked stretched, the eyes wide and glinting in the dark. "Come play with us," it said again, the voice dripping sweetly, as if it were something innocent. But the laughter sent chills racing down my spine. It felt like a warning. Panic surged, and my instincts kicked in. I yanked the tent flap closed and zipped it up, heart racing. What was that thing? But the laughter grew into a crescendo, surrounding me like an inescapable spell. I pressed my palms to my ears, trying to block it out, but it seeped in. Suddenly, the child's voice came again, this time right next to my ear. "Don't be scared, we just want to play." I felt something brush against the side of the tent. My throat tightened, and I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I grasped my phone, the flashlight now my only reassurance. Then I caught movement again, a shadow outside, shifting rapidly. My heart raced as I wondered if it would come inside. How many were there? In that moment of sheer dread, I made a decision. I had to get out of there, away from whatever was trying to pull me in. Before I could second-guess myself, I scrambled for the back of the tent. Surveying my surroundings, I realized that nothing felt safe anymore. I unzipped a small opening at the bottom and crawled out, determined to escape. But when I emerged, the laughter was gone. Instead, the forest was utterly silent. That uneasy quietness gripped me. But then my eyes landed on the ground. In the dirt, small handprints were imprinted,
leading away into the shadows. I froze, realizing I wasn't just escaping, I was being hunted. I stood there, caught in the fading glow of my flashlight, staring at the handprints. They looked like they belonged to a child, but they were too small, too unnatural for comfort. A chill slid down my spine. The mere sight of them felt ominous. I had to see where they led, but dread pulled at my gut like a weight. Taking a deep breath, I scanned the trees, searching for movement. The silence felt suffocating, wrapping around me like a thick fog. I had already made my choice to leave the tent, but now that I was out, the shadows seemed to stretch toward me, almost beckoning. Against my better judgment, I followed the trail of handprints. Each step felt heavy, as though the ground was treacherous beneath my feet. I tried to convince myself that it was just a sign of kids playing nearby, maybe from a family camping out like I was. Yet every instinct urged me to turn back. As I moved deeper into the woods, my flashlight flickered and dimmed. My heart raced. I couldn't let it happen now. I shook the device, but it only produced a weak beam. I cursed under my breath, suddenly feeling very exposed. But there was something more pressing than my malfunctioning light. A sound broke the silence. Soft whispering carried on the breeze, but this time it wasn't just one voice. It was multiple voices, overlapping, giggling, and echoing. "Come play with us." They were closer now. My pulse quickened as I turned, attempting to determine their source. I stumbled over roots, feeling the cold air wrap around me, and I rushed forward, following the handprints until they disappeared into the shadows. Underbrush. Just then, I caught a glimpse of something up ahead, a flicker of movement in the shadows. I squinted through the darkness, catching sight of a flash of white. Something small darted behind a tree, just out of reach. It felt like a trap. They wanted me to follow. Backing away felt like a mistake. I was torn between leaving and uncovering whatever secret seemed to lie ahead. I took a deep breath, forcing my body to remain still. I had to focus. Then I heard it again, clearer this time, mingled with the laughter. "Don't leave. We want to play." Panic surged within me. I spun around, ready to head back, but the noise of snapping twigs halted me. I was no longer alone. A figure appeared, small and hunched. It stood at the edge of the trees, the moonlight revealing a halo of wild, untamed hair. Then it spoke. "Why don't you stay? Just a little longer." That voice, sweet but so unervingly wrong. It felt like I had stepped into a nightmare. I took a step back, my breath hitching in my throat. There was something terrifyingly magnetic about it, an urge to answer, to approach. I forced myself to turn away, bolting through the underbrush, desperate to escape whatever had drawn me in. But that wasn't the end. As I ran, there was a sudden thud behind me. I didn't dare look back, knowing whatever chased me would be relentless. The laughter followed, echoing behind me, wrapping around me like a dark shroud. Then I stumbled upon something unexpected, a small, forgotten object, half buried in the dirt. I bent down to pick it up, my breath uneven. In my hand, I held a weathered toy, a broken doll. That's when I saw it, a small handprint right next to it, fresh and clear. I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't just a game. I had to find a way out. But could I escape whatever was hunting me in these woods? As the laughter intensified, I prepared to run again, knowing the night had only just begun to reveal its terror. I sprinted, heart pounding like a drum in my ears. The laughter, haunting and childlike, echoed around me. It felt like the woods were alive, the trees themselves whispering secrets as I dashed through the darkness. I fought the urge to look back. I couldn't face whatever was chasing me. The branches snagged at my clothes and skin, tearing at my legs as I pressed on. I had to escape the eerie laughter that seemed to dance just behind me.
"Don't leave," it taunted again. Each word wrapped around my mind, filling it with dread. Finally, I burst into a small clearing, the dense trees giving way to a patch of moonlit ground. I skidded to a halt, gasping for breath. My flashlight flickered back to life, casting a weak glow on my surroundings. The light trembled, but it was enough to reveal something shocking.
In the center of the clearing stood a circle of stones, each one arranged in a neat formation. Simple yet strange, it was as if they marked a boundary. I approached cautiously, curiosity battling with fear. That's when I noticed the ground inside the circle. It was dark, as if the earth had been stained with something ominous. Before I could process it, a cold wind swept through the clearing. It picked up suddenly, rustling the leaves and sending chills down my spine. The laughter stopped. In its place, a low hum filled the air, almost like a lullaby. I froze, uncertain if I should stay or run. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted movement just beyond the trees. Two glowing eyes peered at me, reflecting the dim light. A figure stepped forward, small and ghostly pale. It had the same wild hair, the same shape as the one I had seen before. My throat tightened, and the air felt thick with dread. "Come join us," it beckoned, voice sweet yet sinister. "We just want to play." I felt my feet shift, an involuntary response to its invitation. It was wrong. Everything warned me to turn away. I jerked back and turned to flee, but suddenly stumbled over a root. As I fell, I felt something cold brush against my hand. I reached instinctively for the ground, gripping the soil like it was my only lifeline. When I steadied myself, I looked at what I'd touched. It was another object, this time a wrapped bundle, partially hidden in the dirt. I unwrapped it hastily, my hand trembling. Inside was an old, faded photograph. There were several smiling children, but what horrified me was the date written on the back, 1973. An icy realization dawned on me. These children had been gone for decades. I was in their playground, and now they seemed to want me. Before I could process the weight of that knowledge, a high-pitched giggle erupted from the trees. It sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I looked around wildly, wild eyes searching for another escape route. The clearing felt like it was closing in. I had to move. "Why don't you stay?" the figure cooed again. With every second I hesitated, I could feel the darkness pulling at me, creeping closer. I bolted. I didn't know where I was running or how far I'd go, but I couldn't let those childlike voices consume me. As I regained my bearings, I realized something that made my pulse quicken even more. The way back to camp was not clear anymore. The woods had changed. I barreled through the trees, each step more frantic than the last. The flashlight flickered wildly, and I could barely see where I was going. Shadows danced around me, almost mocking my panic. I fought to control my breathing, but the memory of those glowing eyes and the sinister call echoed in my mind. Branches clawed at me, almost purposeful.
Like they wanted to hold me back. My foot caught on a root and I stumbled, arms flailing to catch myself. I fell hard to the ground, the impact knocking the wind out of me. For a moment, all I could do was lay there, gasping for breath, heart pounding. But then I remembered. I had to keep moving. I pushed myself up and pressed forward again, desperate for any signs of civilization. The sound of laughter returned, weaving between the trees, filling the air with an unholy melody. It felt like I was being lured deeper into the forest, deeper into whatever nightmare awaited me. Suddenly, I broke through the underbrush into another clearing. This one was different. It felt heavy, oppressive beneath the weight of the trees that loomed around it. In the moonlight, I spotted something in the middle, a swing set. It was old, rusted, and eerily still. There were no signs of the children, but I felt as if they were watching me, waiting for their moment to emerge.
"Come play with us," a voice whispered, softer but more chilling than the last. I whipped around, scanning the woods for the source. The laughter grew louder, piercing through the silence with a sinister glee. I backed away, instinct screaming at me to run. "This isn't real," I mumbled, shaking my head. Yet I could feel the weight of the unseen eyes pressing down on me. In the dim light, I noticed something glinting among the weeds near the swing. Cautiously, I moved closer, heart racing at the thought of what I might find. I knelt beside it, revealing a small, rusted pendant shaped like a key, the same design engraved in the stones from the last clearing. A wave of nausea washed over me. It felt connected, as if the key was calling to the dark history of this place. Fear gripped me. I couldn't ignore the logic that told me to find out more, but every instinct begged me to turn back. Then the ground beneath me trembled slightly, and a soft rumble followed. Startled, I dropped the pendant, letting it clatter unnoticed into the weeds. I stumbled backward as the air thickened with a sweet, decaying smell. Suddenly, the swing creaked, swinging back and forth as if pushed by invisible hands. My heart raced and panic surged through my veins. I ran. I tore through the trees, desperate to escape the nightmare swallowing me whole. After what felt like hours of dodging branches and stumbling over roots, I finally skidded to a halt. I had returned to the stone circle. My voice cracked as I called out into the silence. "Is anyone there?" There was no response, only the whisper of the wind. But then I noticed something shifted inside the circle's dark ground. It was subtle, almost like breathing. My stomach dropped. I took a step back, and that's when I saw it. A face, pale and twisted, emerging from the earth. My scream echoed through the woods as I turned to run, but it felt like I was being drawn toward that sinister presence. The woods had changed again, and I was trapped in their web. I turned to run, my legs moving on instinct. The twisted face lingered in my mind like a nightmare that refused to fade. I sprinted back through the trees, desperate to distance myself from whatever darkness was brewing in the clearing. The laughter echoed behind me again, a taunting reminder of the otherworldly presence that seemed to follow. Each step felt heavier, and I struggled to maintain my speed. Dodging low-hanging branches, I felt the frantic thudding of my heart in my throat. I didn't know where I was going, but any direction was better than staying there. The wind whipped through the trees, crying out in desperation, as if it knew what I had seen. In my muddled escape, I stumbled upon another clearing. Unlike before, this space felt unnaturally serene. Moonlight pooled gently on the ground, illuminating a small rock formation ahead. But it wasn't the peaceful scene that stopped me. It was the sight of something embedded in the ground, a metal signpost. I approached it cautiously. The sign was old and weathered, with letters barely visible. I wiped at the grime, revealing the faded words, "Beware the lost." I swallowed hard, confusion mingling with fear. Lost? Lost what? My heart sank further, already knowing the answer. I turned to scan the woods, half expecting to see shadows creeping toward me. But there was nothing. The laughter was silenced. I was alone, trapped only by the weight of my uncertainty and dread. Then, as if on cue, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I squinted into the darkness. Something shifted between the trees. I felt my pulse race anew, adrenaline kicking back in. "Hello?" I called out, my voice wavering. There was no reply, only the rustle of leaves. Just as I considered running again, a figure stepped into the moonlight. It was a child, a little girl, perhaps 7 or 8, her pale hair disheveled. She wore a tattered dress that hung unevenly on her small frame. My heart dropped at the sight. She looked so out of place, yet so ordinary, but the eerie glow of her eyes pierced through the darkness. "Help us, please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, yet it rang clearly in my ears. I took an instinctual step back. My mind raced. Was this part of the game, some trick to lure me in deeper? "Who?" I managed to croak out. "Those who wander too far," she said, her gaze unwavering. "You must leave now." I could barely process her words. "Leave where?" I asked, but my instinct screamed at me to run. Suddenly, I felt a shift behind me, a cold wind wrapping around my shoulders. I turned back to see the trees bending, shadows curling as if they were reaching out for me. Panic seized me again.
I had to escape. Just as I was about to bolt, the girl raised her hand. "You are marked. You can't go back." The words hit me like a physical blow. I thought of the face I saw emerging from the earth and dreaded what that meant. I took another step back, swallowing hard. "Marked? What do you mean?" Then she pointed behind me, and everything went dark. The world around me seemed to fold in on itself, leaving me in a suffocating shroud of shadow. I gasped, stumbling forward as bright light suddenly flooded back into my vision. I was on my knees in the same clearing, but everything felt different. The girl was gone. The serene moonlight now pulsed like a heartbeat, casting strange shapes that twisted unnaturally on the ground. I could feel a heavy weight in the air, like a storm was about to break. "Where did you go?" I shouted, my voice echoing into the silence. It was useless, but I needed to hear something, anything. The girl's warning echoed in my mind. "You are marked." The forest suddenly felt alive. An unseen presence lurked just beyond the edge of the moonlight, a reminder that I was not alone. I stood cautiously, glancing wildly around me for the girl or for any sign of the twisted face. I took a few hesitant steps back, but just then a soft whimper caught my attention. I turned sharply to my left. There, just beyond the reach of the light, partially hidden by a thicket, stood another figure. This one was smaller and appeared disheveled, like the girl, but something felt off. I squinted, straining to make it out. A wild mane of dark hair framed a pale face, and the eyes that met mine were not like the girl's. They were voids that pulled me in. "Help," it said, a raspy whisper that slithered through the air. "They won't stop." My chest tightened. "Who won't stop?" I asked, my voice shaking. The figure stepped forward, a boy. His clothes were filthy and torn, but worse was the expression on his face, raw fear mixed with a hopelessness that wrapped around my heart like a vice. He raised a hand, trembling. "Run!" he shouted suddenly, his voice breaking. "You can't stay here." I didn't need to be told twice. I turned and sprinted toward the nearest trees, desperation fueling my steps again. I didn't glance behind me, not wanting to know what lurked in the shadows. The cold breath of the forest was at my back, whispering that I was still being watched. Branches whipped against my arms and legs, drawing blood, but I barely felt it. My mind raced, pieces of the puzzle colliding. Who were these lost children? Why were they here? Then I remembered the sign, "Beware the lost." The heavy feeling in my gut intensified, but I couldn't stop. I broke through the dense thicket, bursting into another clearing. To my horror, it was a perfect circle. Surrounded by trees that contorted like hands reaching skyward. In the center sat an old stone well, and beside it lay a heap of belongings. Clothes, toys, dirt-covered shoes. My stomach churned at the realization that this place wasn't just a path, it was an ending. Then, as if summoned by the thought, I heard the laughter again. It filled the air, sharp and piercing, resonating with a familiarity that chilled me to the bone. I turned to see shadows converging on the edge of the clearing, the figures emerging from the darkness, their shapes echoing the twisted face I had seen before. They were close now, too close, surrounded by a laughter that twisted like a knife. With nowhere left to go, I felt the weight of what was coming. I had to confront whatever it meant to be marked and what had called me deeper into this nightmare.
But first, I had to find a way to escape the game that had drawn me in. Just then, from the shadows, came a whisper, a voice tinged with malice. "You're one of us now." I froze, understanding washing over me. I wasn't just marked, I might already be lost. The laughter danced around me, filling the air with an electric tension. My heart thudded with a fear that both paralyzed and spurred me into action. I stood at the edge of the clearing, surrounded by the shadows of those who had been lost before me, their twisted forms beckoning with outstretched hands. They were children, but not just any children. They were echoes of a time long past, trapped in this warped reality of their own making. Instinct kicked in. I had to run. I backed away, fully aware of the danger, but I stumbled on the uneven ground. How many had been taken by this forest? I had no time to contemplate the futility of my situation. The presence behind me loomed closer, that eerie whisper pulling at my consciousness. "You're one of us now," it echoed in my mind. I forced myself to turn and sprint toward the trees, branches clawing at me as I pushed through the thicket, adrenaline propelling me forward. I could feel the sinister energy swirling behind me, the pressure of countless eyes urging me to stop, to accept my fate. Then, as I barreled through the underbrush, I stumbled into the very clearing where I had first encountered the child. The well stood before me, dark and foreboding, the memories nearly overwhelming. I couldn't fathom what I'd left behind, but I understood one thing. I had to escape. As I neared the well, I caught a glimpse of the surrounding stones, those symbols from my earlier explorations. The warning from the sign flashed in my thoughts. Beware the lost. Perhaps there was something here that could help me break the pull this place had on me. Desperation surged, and I reached down to grasp one of the stones. When my fingers brushed its surface, a jolt of energy coursed through me. The laughter faded slightly. I had to make a choice. I could accept the darkness and become a part of this twisted game, or I could fight back against its grip. "Get away!" I shouted, and I hurled the stone into the well with all my might. It struck the water below with a heavy splash, sending ripples through the air. As the stone fell, the shadows around me shuddered, and the laughter shifted to confusion, a discordant melody of uncertainty. Suddenly, the world felt lighter, as if the oppressive weight of despair let up, even if just for a moment. The childlike figures hesitated, flickering in and out like static on a screen. Hope flooded my veins. I grabbed another stone and repeated the process, launching it into the abyss of the well. "Leave me alone!" I yelled again, each word filled with defiance. The laughter became a cacophony, twisting into cries of rage merged with something almost desperate. As more stones hit the water, I noticed the forms begin to flinch, as if breaking free from a binding spell. With renewed urgency, I ran to gather more stones, my mind racing with the possibility that this was my way out. Time moved sluggishly as I hurled them into the depths of the well, until finally the shadows began to dissipate, becoming wisps in the moonlight. Just then I heard a voice, clearer than before. "Don't go! We want to play!" But I was beyond listening. I sprinted backward, my feet pounding against the soft earth. The path before me grew clearer with each movement, the darkness retreating. I could see the edge of the forest, the trees thinning ahead. I burst through the final barrier of branches and into the open air. The night sky stretched above me like a canvas filled with stars, untouched by the darkness I had escaped. I spun around and looked back. The woods stood still. No traces of the laughter or shadows remained. But the unease settled in the pit of my stomach. The forest felt like a waking nightmare released temporarily, and I knew the memories would haunt me. As I took a few steps away from the tree line, I swore heard faint laughter still rustling in the breeze. Was it just the wind playing tricks, or was something lingering, watching me from the darkness? I glanced back one last time, then turned and ran for my car parked at the edge of the road. I had survived, but at what cost?
The experience left scars, both seen and unseen. The memories of those lost children would linger in my mind, always present, and I couldn't help but wonder, could I ever truly escape what I had encountered? I drove away, leaving the campsite behind, but I'd never forget those chilling eyes, the laughter, and the lingering question of the supernatural versus that which played at the edges of our reality. Sometimes something remains, even as we leave, hidden
in the spaces between the ordinary.